Hello, it's Polish Pol VR, and today we're doing kind of like a retrospective video because we're gonna check out Project Morpheus presentation from Games Developer Conference that took place on March 18, 2014.
Thank you.
I'm gonna tell you about, the stuff what they showed off, the stuff that happened, the stuff that didn't happen, and what people expected.
Good afternoon, everyone. And thank you for coming to this.
So here we have Mr. Yoshida. People kind of expecting what they're gonna get. That's why they're laughing. He's an awesome dude, so smart yet so kind, and just so humble.
I like GDC, and for me, GDC is like Megan says, where I can get a quick snapshot of what's new and trending in the industry. And
very right, very wise words here. That's one of the reasons why they chose GDC as well. And you're gonna see it later on during the conference. Basically, they wanted the developers' feedback on the console, on the headset itself. You're gonna see how much different PSVR was back then, before the final product, and how many games that they showed didn't actually happen, and what's happened to some of the studios that been making very, very early PSVR games. So we kind of gonna extend this video.
It's particularly exciting. Sorry, I forgot the slides.
He put the wrong slide on, something I would do.
Talk about innovation at PlayStation and what's coming next.
And remember, this is 2014, this is 8 years ago. That was cutting-edge technology back then. But a lot of it gonna translate, still be relevant in 2022 and much, much further in the future.
To create new experiences for game players. Experiences that people maybe were not expecting or didn't know were possible. The way we look at innovation at PlayStation is to focus on pushing the boundary of play. It's this focus that drives how we innovate and create new experiences we deliver to gamers. These are some of the technological advancements that PlayStation has leveraged.
Back in the day when PS Now was an upcoming thing. Of course, many people using PS Now. Now it's changing soon to this PS Plus Premium.
And this summer, we are launching PS Now, a streaming game service that leverages Gaikai's cloud-based technology.
Early PS Now, I think they collaborated with Microsoft actually to use their streaming servers or something. Or maybe they still do, I don't know.
Gaming that we take for granted today.
Here we go. That's what we are here for, virtual reality. You can hit the applause because many developers were super excited for it.
Is the next innovation from PlayStation that may well shape the future of games.
And what an innovation it was. Now the question, didn't it shape the future of games? It definitely changed. Changed how people play games, for many, many people who loves VR.
Making games immersive has always been one of the goals of game creators. Game developers have used and experimented with technologies like 3D graphics, first-person view camera, HD resolution, realistic physics, motion capture, motion input, and augmented reality. All of these have contributed to creating immersion in games. The feeling that you, as a player, are so engrossed within the world that the developer has created. You forget that you are actually playing a game.
They are creating a sense of presence. That's what they really wanted to do. And they managed to achieve it, of course, those days. The virtual reality technology, 8 years later, come far, far, better. We've got wireless headsets like Quest, like Pico Neo. You can buy
can
wireless
only be
adapters for Vive. You
realized
got,
by VR.
you know, Vive it's standalone as well.
VR has been
But also
a
you got
dream of
wired
many
headsets
game
who
creators
deliver more
ever
of,
since
let's
the
say,
computer game
advanced
was
graphical
invented.
power. And PSVR
Many of
and
us
Sony, that's what they're
at
going for.
PlayStation
So you always got a
have
wire.
dreamed about VR
But I'm
and what
thinking
it
with
could mean
PSVR
to
2
the
they
game
might
we
do
create.
some adapters for the
As soon
future
as
to
our
do not have wire.
developers got their hands on the most accurate consumer-level 3D input
Back in the
device,
day, yes.
these guys, PS
Listen,
Move,
2014,
they
I think
started
Oculus,
experimenting
you could get
with
hands on,
VR.
there was development kits, and it
These
was
are
pretty
photos of
smooth,
me
but I don't think the
trying
touch
handmade
controllers
VR
was
put
happening
together
back in
by some
2014.
Universal Studios people.
Motion controllers was the most, no, PSVR Move controllers, they was most
The
advanced
left-hand
VR
side
controllers.
photo was taken back in
Back then.
2010. They duct tape PS Move controller on a low-res viewer called Headplay.
Okay, I paused it in a minute here. I want to talk a bit about what's going on those pictures. So those are the very early prototypes of PSVR. It started as a grassroots project. It wasn't something what like super funded straight away. You can see even 2010, that's when they was working on it. That's 12 years ago. They started Move controller to one of the Sony's viewers. So 2010 is a very low quality. Was it Visiontron? I can't remember now. And then in 2011 they used a more advanced Sony's viewer. And also what you can see, even though, you know, it was the very early days, thanks to those personal viewer technology, the head-mounted displays, what Sony always been working on since 1992, they retain the most comfortable VR format that everyone strives for now. So basically the weight is balanced on your forehead, and that's what they've been going on from the early days. That's what they developed, and you can tell how much it's helped with the final product design. And all other PSVR, you know, not PSVR, the virtual reality headset designs. This is the weight distribution on top of your forehead basically seems to be the most optimal VR, you know, comfort option at the moment.
The right
Okay,
one
let's carry on.
Was in March 2011. They used Sony's HMZ personal 3D viewer, which had a higher resolution. And they hacked God War 3 into a first-person view arena battle demo.
I paused it again a bit, so in this conference, pay attention to what games they showing. So now he's talking about God of War 3, we're gonna have footage for God of War 3 in VR, that was in 2014, and that was the latest God of War title, there wasn't the 2017 or 18 God of War. So listen, this was like, that's what people expected, I think, because they've been talking about such a big titles in this, you know, this presentation. I think people was expecting having AAA games from the get-go on PSVR. Of course, something that didn't happen. But anyway, the little footage what they're gonna show from God of War 3 in VR looks pretty cool. Okay, let's carry on.
Where I became Kratos. And here's a short video of that.
There we go. Just imagine. Look at the headset in the corner they're using. Nice. Everyone laughed and liked that.
Thank you. So that was 3 years ago on PS3.
So in 2011 they've been playing God of War on PS3 in VR.
Down, I saw my body was that of Kratos. That was empowering experience, as you could imagine. The next video we showed in public, actually, so some of you might remember.
I paused it here. I actually done a couple of years ago video about it. So this is Datura. It was a PSN game, but also it utilized Move controllers. So the developer was asked to basically do like a virtual reality experience just for the presentation is pretty cool. The studio what did Datura and this experience, it's actually Polish studio, Plastic, and you know them from Bound, a very early PSVR release and very original as well, and very early example of third person in VR. The game was very artistic, you know, your character was doing those ballet moves, let's say, but also thanks to the graphics, rendering options what they went for, it's aged beautifully. It's still one of the better looking VR games, and it's a very good title, but the studio, it's like a scene studio from Poland, very known on the little, you know, indie gaming scene, group of people getting together making games. Of course, after the Bound, they didn't release any other PlayStation VR titles, sadly, but still delivered some cool stuff. So okay, let's carry on.
We released this video as a promotion for the PSN title Datura.
There you go, that's what he's saying. Now listen, the whole video is pretty cool to watch as well, how it's all come together. So I quickly gonna show it you now so you can see how they all put everything together to make it happen. Very cool video. A shame that this game didn't find its way to PSVR headset, but nevertheless, the developer managed to achieve something really cool, let's say, with the technology built in the garden. Of course, this is like saying the garden, it's like this very early technology, not of course built in the garden, but they managed to kind of figure out things themselves, and it's pretty cool to look back at it.
In March 2012. This time using Sony's HMZ and two PS Move controllers, one for the head tracking and the other for the hand tracking. Of course, using the HMZ with narrow view angle was not exactly the total immersion that we wanted, but it was enough to show us the potential of VR for games. Soon after our homemade experiment started in 2010, we kicked off our official R&D work to create a VR headset optimized for gaming. We formed a cross-functional global team composed of SCEI hardware group, SCEA R&D, and Worldwide Studios members. This was a similar development process we used to develop PS Vita and PS4, so it's proven to work well for us. By the way, this was a prototype made in 2012 by the SCEA R&D group, and you can tell they wanted to make the tracking extra accurate.
Look at those light bulbs on top of the head.
With all of that history, I'm thrilled to introduce Project Morpheus, a virtual reality system for PlayStation 4.
I paused it here for a second. Pay close attention how much little details changed before the original headset hit the shelves.
Thank you. And actually, I have the actual unit here. Some of you might have guessed where it is.
He's so cool, this dude. Tom, tom, tom. As you can see, the middle light's missing, the middle light in the middle of the headset. And I think the halo is slightly bigger and rounder.
30 seconds. This is the culmination of our work over the last 3+ years to realize a vision of VR for games and to push the boundaries of play. And this prototype is by no means final, and we will continue to work on this to improve, but we believe it's a good representation of how PlayStation will deliver VR. We are very excited to have you try this in our booth starting tomorrow. Yes.
Now he's gonna talk a bit about the demos they're gonna do, so pay attention to that.
To give us feedback. This prototype also serves as the first development kit for PS4 developers who are as excited and enthusiastic about this space as us. We believe Morpheus will further enhance the world of PS4 with seamless integration with PlayStation Camera, DualShock 4, and PS Move. Morpheus will provide an easy-to-use, plug-and-play VR experience to consumers, and will expand the ecosystem of PS4 with another medium for our publishers and developers to create content. We will continue to improve this prototype by getting direct feedback from you developers. That's why we chose GDC to announce Project Morpheus.
GDC, of course, stands for Game Developers Conference. So like he said, they've done it there purely because they wanted to get all the feedback from the developers and improve it. And that's why probably the design changed a bit slightly before the final product hit the shelves.
And share learnings on this exciting technology. I have an enormous amount of respect for them. And we were inspired and encouraged by the enthusiastic reactions by developers and journalists who tried their prototypes. This shows how all of us as an industry, can rally around a new medium like VR to push gaming forward. Now I'd like to turn it over to Rick Marks, who will discuss more about the potential of VR and PlayStation's unique position in the market. He'll be followed by Anton Mikhailov, who will share technical details of this prototype and how developers can leverage it to create compelling VR experiences. Thank you.
Okay, so he's done his bit. There will be some people talking more technical, and that's quite interesting. Now remember, this is 8 years ago in 2014. PlayStation VR itself is going to be 6 years old this year. It's pretty mental how long Sony kept it alive. Especially that we've got companies like, Meta, previously known as Facebook, releasing pretty much brand new headset each year. Valve joined the company, but yet still the company joined the VR space, but still good old PSVR was there from day one, and it's lasted 6 years, and probably maybe even goes to 7th year because before PSVR 2 releases. Okay, let's listen what their main goals for VR was.
In another physical place. That place could be a realistic place, it could be a fantastic place. Both work, but it's really that feeling of being somewhere else. And there's no way to explain it to you that will make sense, but it's that feeling of presence that we're...
And that's what we struggle with when you're trying to explain VR for someone, and basically you have to experience it for yourself.
So, I'm not going to talk about it too much more, but how well we can make the technology that lets us achieve that presence is really going to dictate how well VR gets adopted by a large audience. So for me, I'm actually not a person who all his life has been trying to achieve VR. For me, actually, when I first experienced presence is when I switched from being a supporter of VR to a huge advocate of VR. So actually, I've had a big shift in my belief just by getting to feel it firsthand. Well, just like any new technology, there's an S-curve for it. And VR has been on this flat first part of the S for a long time. The trick with the S-curve is to know where you are. Now, we're just reaching this inflection point, a really exciting place on the S-curve, where advances in the quantitative technology can really make a huge qualitative leap in the experience you get out of it. So I actually, as a technologist, I feel super lucky to be part of this time, this period when this is happening. Because presence is disruptive. I mean, it's really that compelling. It's going to become pervasive. It's going to become the preferred medium for all sorts of applications, not just games. I mean, it'll be awesome for games, but it'll go beyond games. Letting people feel like they're present somewhere else, it's going to impact all sorts of other kinds of entertainment, and even non-entertainment applications. Just for example, actually I've been working on something with a joint project with NASA. And
how cool it is to say you're working with NASA.
They're actually here today. And we
That's pretty cool.
I mean, the reason we're doing it is because it's super cool just to work with NASA. But also, the reason is we have two kind of main goals. The first one is they're already trying to use VR to do immersive science.
Okay, so I stop here for a moment because I want to show you some VR what NASA been working on. You can see it playing in the background, and this is the video from 1985. So that's how early they was going. Probably there was projects earlier on as well, but this is like, you can put your VR headset on your head, and they've been using it, to try to, this is a prototypes to try to train astronauts in VR. You've got this big massive helmet, of course got screen display. You can see in the background the frame rate and the quality of graphics, let's say, the graphics itself. It's all very kind of primitive back then. But listen, that was 1985, that's when NASA been working with VR. So it's pretty cool to look back at it, especially when they are now, the technology definitely progressed. But yeah, really, really cool. Okay, let's carry on with that. But NASA headset, I must say, something else. I would like to try it. I don't know if you can those days, but yeah, really, really interesting.
And so we'd love to make hardware that's good enough for them to be able to do that. They're like a sounding board for us. If they can use it for that, then we're good. Secondly, we would like to create new experiences for our PlayStation owners. so that when NASA gets to a new place, everyone who owns a PlayStation can feel like they're there exploring right along with them. And so one of the things that I worked on personally, in this whole week we had the guys from JPL up working on it, is a Mars demo where you feel like you're actually standing on Mars, the surface of Mars. We have the real data captured by the Curiosity rover, and we have the real model of the rover that's kind of driving along next to you. VR is going to be pervasive, and what I mean by that is it's going to be all sorts of things you'd never think.
So back then everyone, you know, not experienced VR as we do now, but we of course by now, all those years later, already been on the moon, on Mars, in the fantasy lands, all in virtual reality from comforts of our homes. And back then that was something what people was really looking forward to in the future. In the future is now.
Like that you would need to create that kind of environment automatically. It'll be a few years before we can automate that process, but that's where we're going. So there's this awesome vision, you know, that we have of how important VR is going to be. How do we get there? Well, we've identified these 6 main areas. I mean, presence is hard. Presence is hard to achieve. That's why it hasn't happened in so long. But
that's what Meta going for as well. That's why they all about you know, standalone headsets, the presence.
Industry. So the first 2, sight and sound, are really, we need to deliver really rich experience to our richest 2 senses. We need the whole world, virtual world, to respond in a natural way when you move your head around. We need to be able to interact with that world, reach out into it. And then we need to do all this in a very easy to use, approachable manner. And then of course, finally, we need to have the right content for it that leverages the new medium properly. So let me go into these a little bit more detail to explain how we're doing some of these things. First of all, sight. Well, to achieve presence, we need a high-res, high frame rate, low persistence
Back
display.
then it was high-res. And now listen, PSVR headset, screen display, it still holds up those days, you know, it's very solid display, very low latency, very smooth, very little screen door effect, something what was PSVR, let's say, like a recognizing point. It had very low screen door effect, of course, the other studios, other VR headset developers gone around it. By back then, and still, you know, like I'm saying, still, PSVR screen, bit low resolution, I would like it to be higher, that's why it will be PSVR 2, but holds up very well, especially with colors.
That's where the graphics power of PlayStation 4 is going to come in and be able to render these beautiful virtual worlds. Equally important, actually, is sound. I mean, again,
look what game they showing. They showing the Journey. So once again, that back then that was kind of recognizable game thanks to the original gameplay and art design and cool story. So this is something what probably we was expecting when PSVR dropped, and of course the reality was we've had plenty of small games and let's say tech experiences, tech demos.
Consistent way with the graphics. So having spatialized sound is really important. And it goes even beyond that. Actually, the way the human brain works, you really use the directionality of sound to filter out what's important to you and what's not. So this directionality lets you be able to focus on...
Very interesting what he's saying about the sound.
Have that, it would be a giant cluttered mess in your brain of what's going on.
Of course, as we know, many people noticed right away when Skyrim VR released that they had 3D sound. It's so recognizable in virtual reality when the sound is just stereo and not 3D. So very good.
Have tracking, what you'd have is basically you'd have a kind of like a personal theater on your head.
So they're talking about the tracking now. I'm gonna come back to it a bit more later. Show you very cool video.
VR at that point. What makes it VR is that when you move your head, all the virtual world reacts in a proper way. And of course, it's both the sound and the display that have to do this. And we're using the same kind of technology that we use with PlayStation Move
controllers.
We have a lot higher rate sensors, inertial sensors, and we have, of course, the new PlayStation camera, which is stereo, and it almost seems like it was designed for VR, actually.
So he said that because, of course, it was designed for VR, and that's why the DualShock released with the light bar as well. They was ready for VR.
Kind of the minimum.
They wanted it.
You need to be able to track the rotation. But actually, the position tracking is really key. The kind of cues that come from position tracking, the parallax, the occlusion, the specularity.
We all complaining about PSVR tracking those days. Of course, many headsets doing it better. But back then was a very good solution for the developers. First of all, you know, having just one point, let's say, of reference for the camera, and very good solution for Sony as well, because it wasn't too expensive.
Interaction is what makes games games. That's the difference between it and other media. So this is kind of my personal area of expertise. I've worked on this a lot, and actually PlayStation has really put a lot of focus into control. Actually, control in VR is a hard problem. There's going to be a lot of problems to solve down the road. Actually, I really like my job security right now, because I think we're going to be working on this one for a while. But actually, PlayStation's in a great place as far as control goes. We have an awesome controller, which is DualShock 4.
The good old
and it actually has sensors inside of it, and it has the light on the
Move controller still using those.
Same PlayStation camera as we use for Morpheus. And then we have actually PlayStation Move. PlayStation Move was actually kind of a little bit ahead of its time. You know, it is actually a really good VR controller, full 6 degrees of freedom. So we have we're really kind of happy with our positioning and control here. To really make this all matter to a lot of people, it's going to have to be easy to use. And what I mean is you're going to have to be able to drive to the store, buy one of these, come home, plug it in, turn it on, and it just works.
Funny he says that, because they made it convenient, but of course those days it's very inconvenient. And really, you've got only like 4 cables to mess around with, and it takes 5 minutes. But of course, you know, now with PSVR 2, you're just gonna have one cable. So everything what they're talking about, all this presence, all this ease of use, that's what they're going for since 2014, well even earlier, 2010. So it's just progressing. PSVR 2 will be, of course, one cable, plugging in, putting it on, and it will just work.
So, you know, we're used to working on this kind of area. So we'll get that one nailed. Last thing, it brings us to content. So at Worldwide Studios, we have a really good team, and you know, they'll be delivering a seed of content to get this whole ball rolling. But the reason, like Shu mentioned, that we're announcing this here at GDC is we really need the entire development community if we want to achieve what we think is possible with VR. So as a platform holder, it's our job to create this great content pipeline for you guys to be able to make these great experiences. So we're working to get authoring tools, get engines, and get the whole distribution channel, like we have already for PlayStation, all in place for you guys to be able to deliver great VR content. We want to make PlayStation the best place for VR, and not only just for people playing VR, but actually developing for VR. So we're working with partners already. We have these partners.
There you go, that's the studio they're working with.
I didn't know it was animated. Yeah, so actually on the NASA demo, we used, for example, we used Unity and Wise for the 2 middlewares for it. So we
Epic Games, of course, Unreal
already
Engine.
have some of this that supports Morpheus. So we're trying to make it, again, as easy as possible for developers to create content. But on the other hand, VR is very new. So some of you who want to dive all the way down into the metal and do these specialized graphics and rendering techniques, I think there will be a lot of space here for you guys too. This is a great time. I mean, this is like the wild, wild west. I mean, this is when there's no rules right now. There's no killer genre that you have to support.
That's why we've got so many, well, not so many, but few big projects that failed.
How often do you get to define a new
Because nobody kind of knew where they are and what they're doing. They tried their best. And also, of course, so many brand new studios emerged and had great success.
I'm going to now get to introduce Anton. He's going to talk to you a little bit more about some of the ideas for how you might create content. But thank you guys very much.
All right, so he stopped talking. So before they talk about the content, I'm going to pause it a second. Actually, no, let's let him talk. So this is a person from research and the development on his team.
I work with Rick at US R&D, and today I'm going to talk to you, a bit about our long-term vision for Project Morpheus, and also about our current diff kit in more detail. So, to start out, our philosophy for VR is really that it's a medium. It's not a peripheral, and that's important to realize because the rules are going to be different. Presence is going to be the killer app for VR, and games will be just one type of content. In this scenario, the VR scenario, emotion is amplified beyond anything you've seen in traditional games. And that makes the experience very social, unlike what people might think traditionally. And this experience will be for everyone.
Let's see, for me, this is just a bit of a gimmick. having people watching you play. I prefer to play VR by myself with nobody around because I can't see them. But of course, to show off VR to people, make them hyped, you need this.
Than it is, to sort of conform to a given genre of today. It's really the player is going to be in the game, not observing it. So you should design it as an experience that a person can enjoy from within your game. Conversely, typical game art can look kind of weird. Normal maps don't always work. Sense of scale can be quite off. We've seen many things like doorways in games are too wide and too short. It looks fine on screen. In VR, you just feel like a hobbit or something, so it's kind of strange. There's a lot of other game design things to talk about. Actually, this talk's really not long enough to cover all we've learned ourselves and from other companies, but I'll go through a few of them just to give you a taste. The first
so
one
that's
is
quite
that
interesting.
Motion for the player is law. You basically can't mess with this. If you mess
So
with
they're
this,
talking about the motion, but look at the screenshot, what they show in Shadow of the Colossus. So, of course, once again, everyone's expectation for games, I think, was those AAA games. So what he means, basically, player is the camera and you cannot mess around with it, unless you're doing like third-person game or something.
So if you have a first-person game, that takes control of the person's camera, often you might consider doing actually a third-person game, which we found to be also quite immersive, and it's a new way of people to experience your content. Same for cutscenes. Cutscenes don't work very well because you're locking the person's view, so it's much better.
He's very right. I always, no matter what the game, be it Blood and Truth, be it something really popular,
game design
I find the cutscenes in VR, I struggle to watch them. I found them boring. When with flat games, I appreciate them.
Find some answers to these. So one of the interesting ones is arm positioning in VR. So, if I'm using something like the Move controller to track my hand, in the real world,
so
I'm not, impeded by anything. But in the virtual world, there might be a
Let
wall.
him talk you about hand position, and then I speak a bit about the very early prototype of Move technology.
To go through the wall. And that makes your game look nice, like in a screenshot, but actually in VR it feels quite weird, because you have a disconnect between where your hand really is and where the.
So this is all the advice for the developers they give him. Of course, Game Developers Conference.
It's kind of strange. So there's another idea you can have is you can maybe draw the hand over everything else all the time, and that seems like a really clever hack at first. You say, well, now my art looks fine, and the person can see their hand, but actually your eyes aren't so easily fooled, and so they feel the difference between where you're converging and where sort of you're accommodating, and there's a depth conflict, and so that one kind of strains your eyes and confuses you further. And sort of ironically, the simplest solution, which is just ignoring the problem and letting the hand clip through VR, actually works quite well. You might do an effect to sort of accentuate.
Yeah, and that works best for me as well. Some games like Apex Construct, for example, when you get too close to wall, it kind of moves the environment, and it's so distracting. I rather prefer just clip through my hands or whatever, my head.
There's some non-intuitive solutions for this. And really, this goes back to presence. We really do believe presence is going to be the killer app, so it's very important.
Okay, before he carry on talking about the presence, let me show you this video. I'm gonna start playing it in the background. And this is the very early PlayStation Move technology prototype. No lights, nothing, just a wooden ball on a stick, let's call it. But you can see how early this is PlayStation toy camera. Remember PSI toy? PlayStation Eye? Yeah, that's how Sony early was with augmented reality as well. They really you get, looking back, you get to appreciate how much they've done for VR and AR. But anyway, look at it, look how they're explaining it. Of course, they expanded it for Move controllers, but very interesting.
When I twiddle my fingers over the object, it kind of activates it. That's the activation of the magic. And then when I draw a shape with it, one of the PlayStation symbols, that's going to recognize the gesture of what spell I want it to cast. So if I do a circle, that's the fire spells. So then I can cast the magic fireball spell, and I can shoot it out of my wand here. So we have a lot of different gestures. So if I twiddle my fingers again to activate it, then I draw a square this time. I get the air spells this time. So you can cast a spell right away, and I get the tornado spell, or I can wait and let it get more power, and then I'll get the hurricane spell. So here's hurricane. You can see it kind of mixes the graphics and the video together here. You get the kind of movie special effects. And one of the neat things is when we first demonstrated this, we had two PlayStations hooked together, and we were dueling each other. So I'd cast a spell at somebody, and they'd cast a spell back at me. And they'd see the spell effect on me, and I'd see the spell effect on them. And we did it over the network. So one of the other controls you have to do on this demonstration is if you step off camera and take a picture of the scene without you in it, like this, by pressing the L1 button, then it takes a snapshot of the background. And then with that, you can do all sorts of neat special movie kind of effects. So one of the secret shapes we had in the game was this kind of upside down triangle. Let's see if I can get this upside down triangle drawn here. That's the mind spells. And if I cast a spell, then I go invisible. You can see I can kind of fade it right out. And I'm kind of only partially visible here. And that's done because we have this backdrop picture of me, of the room without me. And like I said, when we demonstrated this the first time, we had a counter spell for every spell. So if somebody cast invisibility on themselves, you could counter that with the true sight spell. So I'd cast the true sight spell, and then I'd get like my little eyeball that would bring him out, and then I could see. So for the tech demos, a lot of the time we don't have very many art resources, so a lot of it has to be programmer art. So we do lots of spells that are kind of programmer arty, like the California spell, as we call it, or earthquake. Not a whole lot of artwork needed here. And I also try to do as many kind of spell effects as I can that just use image processing. So then one of the other fire spells, if you wait and let it build up more power, you'll get the scorch spell instead of the fireball spell. And that's kind of like this. It's kind of cool fire effect. And there's all the PlayStation symbols, and there's also some secret symbols I'll let you try to find. And again, that's showing color tracking, motion detection, and gesture recognition all in kind of one big demo together.
Okay, let's carry on to see what they're talking about presence in the VR.
It's very easy to break by messing up technical factors or game design factors. So we'd like everybody to be very well aware of that. And it's really the unique selling point of VR. This is what will drive people to VR games. So if you really don't feature presence, it's not clear why people wouldn't be playing your game on a screen. So to really achieve presence on the technical level, you'll need to hit a few key technical factors. There's other ones. Again, there's a lot more to go into than this presentation allows, but the big ones is keeping your latency low. This is, again, kind of a shocker for a lot of people. There's a lot of high latency games out there.
Once again, coming back to why PSVR display holds up so well, because very low latency.
Get you into motion sickness land very rapidly if you mess those up, so please keep those good. And calibration is also very important. I mentioned game art looks strange, so in addition to kind of optical calibration and tracking calibration and everything that we can handle for you on the hardware side, kind of calibrating your environment to be a real-world scale or something similar to it, or something at least self-consistent, again, helps a lot. We found that some games that are rendered very realistically don't give you a sense of presence because, like I said, you'll have a coffee table and a lamp, but their proportions are wrong or the doorway's too narrow or whatever. So that's important. And equally important is rendering the images cleanly. Avoid aliasing, avoid weird post-processing hacks and things like that. So you really just have to...
Yeah, so post-processing, aliasing gives you this sometimes when they go too hard on it. Like, for example, early Firewall, it gives you this effect of basically somebody put Vaseline on the screen. And later on, of course, Firewall developers updated it, so
there's also other
kind of have it
interesting
off.
ideas you can have for different game genres. So for driving, for example, contact points between your real hands and the virtual hands, like on the steering wheel, for example, will greatly increase the sense of presence because not only do you see your hands, you see your hands.
And that's not only goes for driving games, but also your space sims, your flight games when you're using your HOTAS, which stand of course for hands-on throttle, and stick. But yeah, so basically what they're saying is giving advice to developers how to render things. So get you more immersed.
If you're in a race car, you're not gonna bundle a race car seat with your game. Unless you really want to, but that's quite extreme. But actually matching your in-game seat to a typical player seat can actually be a good strategy to increase presence in your game. And of course, for other types of games, if you have a shooting game, a gun peripheral of some sort will greatly enhance it. Again, it doesn't have to match your game perfectly. We have the PlayStation Move gun attachment, and we've used that to simulate crossbows, flares, shoot other different rifles, and that works because you can't see it, right? So you don't know, it's just a feeling. Of course, for sword-based games or, rackets or various sports tools, PlayStation Move does a great job because you actually feel like you have something in your hand. And the DualShock 4 on PlayStation is now also tracked. So if you have a game like a flight game, it quite resembles a flight yoke or something like that. So, the takeaway is really match your controller to whatever implement your virtual avatar will be using, and that will increase the sense of presence. And like I mentioned before, games are really just going to be one type of content that take advantage of this. You can imagine how exciting it is to go to a foreign place for tourism, and virtual tourism, I think, was going to be just as exciting for VR. And it doesn't necessarily need to feature gameplay. I mean, if you go to visit a beautiful cathedral, you don't expect there to be gameplay associated with it. So in the same way, if you visit a beautiful...
I'm gonna pause it here for a minute, because very early example of virtual tourism on PlayStation VR was the little game from the developer Dreams, which we all become too love because they always releasing some bangers. But they released Perfect, and that was the experience what let you just, let's say, relax and enjoy the view. Let's say virtual tourism, of course, quite misunderstood by many of us, including me, because it was an experience to just chill out and explore, not a game. But back then, you know, very early 2016 when PSVR released, we all wanted games, a lot of them.
Place in VR, you don't necessarily need gameplay. So I think areas of interactive media should be particularly excited about this. At the end of the day, though, games we still think are best in the sense of interaction.
And I'm glad he said that they think the games are best. Of course, Meta those days going to the direction, the latest headset Cambria will be for work, they want to replace laptops, while Sony wants just VR, let's say, for games, because they think the games are the best.
Right? So you can do real tourism.
Rightfully so, it's an entertainment company.
Virtual tourism inside, virtual environments. So a lot of the fantastic environments you create can only be experienced by VR, and so that's quite exciting for us. And emotion in this space is really going to be amplified. So this is really above anything you would be able to experience in a traditional game, because you have complete sensory blockout. This is the same reason people go to a movie theater rather than watching certain movies at home. They want to be in a dark space with a large screen, controlled audio. If you have some guy coughing in the front row or a cell phone goes off, immediately your immersion breaks down. You say that guy's annoying or whatever. And so the same thing is happening inside VR. This is going to be the first
Happens
time
to
the
everyone.
game is literally the only thing the person is seeing, probably also hearing if they have full audio blocking headphones. And so you get a whole new palette of emotions you can experiment with. You actually do get a sense of vertigo. So in a regular game...
Okay, I'm gonna stop here now, quickly. I want to look at the slides. Vertigo, claustrophobia, fear of the dark unknown, fear of void, empty spaces, extreme horror, and phobias. So, if you remember Farpoint, the developers probably looked at this, because in Farpoint you've got vertigo, of course, you've got you walking along the cliffs and little, like, let's say, bridges made of stone, what can collapse anytime. Also, when it comes to claustrophobia, they made you to enter caves, unknown caves, and that moves on to the fear of the dark, and you never know what's gonna happen. Fear of void, of course, empty spaces. Farpoint, the first scene I think we can get compared to it. They didn't go much on the horror, but phobias. Now listen, spiders in Farpoint, they designed to jump at your face, they designed to scare you, they designed to maximum utilize maximum of 3D effect to scare player. So definitely what they talking here about the how the developers should work, definitely Farpoint developers listened to a lot of it. Let's go.
Die and have to restart or whatever, but in VR, you actually get a sense of fear when you're standing on a ledge. It can mess some people up. Claustrophobia, fear of the unknown, like a lot of these things are pretty intense. And so you have a whole lot of new emotions to work with, so please be careful, because some of these can really freak people out. But that's also incredibly fun to watch, and so...
Now the developers laughed because they know they're going to play a lot with it.
The experience is going to be very social. I think that once people see people, in VR...
Look at Richie's prank experience, the game purposefully developed to make you scared. For some reason, people keep jumping on the carpet and walls and hurting themselves.
In another space. Well, remember, we have head tracking for VR already. We have hands tracking for VR.
You got a slide about multiplayer. Now listen, for me, so far, I think the most successful games are single player. There is some interesting multiplayer titles, but when it comes to PSVR, probably just Farpoint still alive. Even studios like Ubisoft released many of multiplayer games, Space Junkie, Monkeys and Werewolves Within, all that stuff, Star Trek Bridge Crew, but yeah, definitely it's hard to keep a live multiplayer game in VR, and if somebody does it right, like Firewall 0 Hour, then it's great, but most popular PSVR title, let's say most critically acclaimed, it's your single player experiences, like your Blood and Truth and Astrobots, and you know, all stuff like that.
The headset onto the screen, so people sitting alongside with the person can see what they're experiencing. And I'll talk more about that feature later, but I think that's going to really accelerate the
So he's talking about the social screen. Like I said earlier, I prefer to play by myself, so I never know how my wife gonna annoy me when I can't see her, but never mind.
There's this thing called like the alligator.
Okay, he's talking about old virtual reality headsets, the massive ones.
This is comfortable, it's friendly looking, you know, it doesn't look like it's going to break your head or something. And it works with people with glasses, it works with different head shapes. You know, we learned a lot from the Sony guys in making this happen. And the content is very varied, right?
So his reference was Sony guys, basically the people who's been working on head-mounted displays in past. That's what I mentioned at the beginning of this video.
You know, and if you want a really extreme experience where you're barrel rolling a plane, you know, you might get motion sick from barrel rolling like you would in real life. But you're not going to get motion sick because of VR, right? You're going to have a choice.
So this is interesting how they tried to go about motion sickness, and basically what they said is, if you're prone to motion sickness from planes or cars or whatever, that will happen to you in VR, but you can choose not to play them, because for them, for Sony back then, it was like, you know, bringing real life into the game form, so that's why they kind of went like that about motion sickness, but of course that quickly changed.
I'll go into our current dev kit for now. So again, this is all tentative. But the current dev kit has a 1080p display and a 90-degree field of view.
So they're talking about the development kit.
People wearing glasses.
The development kit, what they're gonna give to the developers.
And there's a quite wide IPD range that we can work with. You know, and it's not necessarily the final thing that we're going for, but it's a good sweet spot for now for developers. So we're quite excited. It's at a stage where we can share it with you today. For the tracking, we're built upon PlayStation Move technology. And you know, we have 1000 hertz tracking in a full 3-meter working volume. It's actually a 3-meter frustum, since it's a camera.
So he's talking about the play space, what they did. Of course, for those days it doesn't seem enough, but back then it was a very good, very affordable and very consumer-friendly technology.
There's also forward prediction. So for games that have some pipeline latency, we can actually predict some of that away. It's sort of a crutch, so you should really try to get your game latency low as possible. You still might need some prediction anyway, because there's always going to be some render latency. But it's a really good feature to get the ball rolling. And you know, to mention again, the tracking is done by the same camera as the DualShock and the PlayStation Move. And you know, that's nice for customers because they don't have to buy a new tracking system. But it's also very nice for developers, because if you've ever used other VR systems and had to calibrate 2 tracking systems together, you know, it's a real pain. So
he's talking about Oculus, and I think Valve as well was releasing prototypes. So this was those base station what you've been using.
We've done binaural audio synthesis, and this is a sort of true spatial sound system synthesized by simulating the human ear.
So this is the 3D sound. I mentioned it with Skyrim when it only had stereo sound and everyone noticed. But also this transfers nicely to the Tempest audio technology that they've got in PS5, because this is the very early beginnings of it, and it's even done in a similar way, of course more primitive. You can see it now on this slide what they're showing. Look at all those people around. There's a person sitting in the middle of the swivel chair, and basically they're spinning her, I think.
And we use this setup to
with all the sounds around her.
And record audios for various signal tones and stuff like that.
The size of this warehouse.
In post, simulate over 60 virtual speakers around you. And that's, you know, that's both distance and angle, right? So it really gives you a pinpoint precision of where the sound is truly coming from. And that really helps not only kind of enhance that sense of presence, but it gives you new gameplay ideas where you can just play a sound and people will turn just like they would in real life. And for the ergonomics, you know, we have quite a unique design. We learned a lot from, you know, parent company Sony about consumer electronic.
So once again, he's talking about head-mounted displays that Sony did in the past. And like I said at the beginning of the video, it is a very comfortable headset, still my favorite to wear. Even though, you know, it's old, it's still great. It's so light, it just feels like nothing presses on your face. It's pretty cool.
We've also added a lot of comfort to it. So like I said, it's adjustable. It actually supports 15 to 25 millimeter eye relief, again, just for this prototype. It's not necessarily final specs, but it's an open air design, so even though there's light blocking, there's lots of air coming through, and that avoids lens fogging, that avoids
Now,
heating issues.
speaking about lens fogging, it does happen in Suddenly. Probably they didn't test it in different temperatures, but let's say when it's hot and you put your PSVR headset on, it fogs right away. So, you know, what I do, I switch it on like 10-15 minutes before, let it warm up. But definitely lens fogging is an issue. That's why in PlayStation VR 2 they already did little vents for you to avoid that. So they did learn from the, let's say, not mistakes, but the previous product. So yes, PSVR 2 definitely not gonna have that issue, or if it will, it's gonna be much less noticeable and much smaller. So lens fogging, I'm glad that they kind of worked on it, because it was an issue that was annoying me a lot.
It's easy for people to understand what's going on. We found that it can be confusing if you show them the kind of standard binocular view that you would see. So it allows the people in the room to follow along with the person that's in VR.
So they're talking about social screen, and that's why they're saying why social screen is reformatted, basically, for flat screen, so people can easily follow
on
it.
the couch and say, I'm like the hero of the game. They can be playing the monsters, because they can see what I see. So they can play against me, even though they don't have a headset on, they're on the couch, they're playing against me. And whoever takes
And here he's talking about asymmetric multiplayer games. Maybe let's talk about VR The Dinner Duo. This is pretty fun game to play flat and VR together. Dirt Rally supported that as well. One of the people could have been your pilot while you was driving.
VR from the media and stuff, it's a very solitary experience. And I think we could turn it into something, you know, much more friendly for everyone. So, you know, that's the overview of our dev kit, but like I said, the best way to try the dev kit is to try our demos.
Okay, demos now.
We're going to have different demos every day, but this is an overview of the demos that we'll have for you this week.
So I posted here you got The Deep from London Studios, of course that found the way to PSVR Worlds, and was one of the most popular demos to show off Project Morpheus, which later on became PSVR of course. But there is some other very interesting demos.
Deep from London Studio, from Worldwide Studios, and in this demo you'll descend in a diving cage into the ocean depths and encounter some of the deadliest predators.
Okay, so in this slide we've got the castle. There is some footage from this. I'm gonna show you in the background and put the video, you know, in the description, so you can watch full one. But this is something that didn't find its way to the PlayStation VR. And the castle, basically, you are in the castle. You've got this little like a ragdoll, let's say, to practice your moves, and that was one of the games that people was experiencing on GDC 2014. Gives you the idea maybe how the combat could have feel in virtual reality.
We also have the castle demo from US R&D, and this demo focuses on PlayStation Move interactions. So you'll have a Move controller in each hand, and you can grab different objects. You'll be able to pick up a sword and bash a dummy with it, like mess with it, shoot it with a crossbow, chop arms off, and all sorts of interesting things. And there's a lot of Easter eggs in that one, so there, you know, you can kind of keep playing with it. We are also very excited to be working with CCP to bring their Eve Valkyrie game.
I waited till they show Eve Valkyrie and the reaction. Now listen, it was an awesome game, so much ahead. CCP Games, basically owned by Sumo Digital now. They pumped tons of money in VR, and they pretty much, I think, overspent.
You know, it's one of the first games to be built.
It was a beautiful game. It's beautiful. It's eased with tons of microtransactions as well, what people didn't appreciate it, but definitely, you know, holds up today greatly.
And we also have Thief from Square Enix, which they've created a special build specifically for VR. So it's not the standard game, but it's sections of the game that's a kind of more immersive experience from the Thief universe. So you can
okay, so I paused it here. There is no footage from Thief VR demo, but they've done it. It was like you was in this building on fire. I think you was escaping. I think you still used DualShock to play this. But once again, one of the more recognizable franchises shown in this presentation, which give people idea that we will get those AAA games. We've had some amazing games on PlayStation VR, but I think this is one of those things what people was expecting, thanks to those presentations like that.
Try that out as well. So those are the demos. They're going to be on the show floor, but it's a first come, first serve basis. So there'll be tickets, and you know, whoever shows up first, you get a ticket and you get a time. and you can come at that time. So you don't have to stand in like an 8-hour line. You'll just get a ticket and show up at the right time. But the tickets are first come, first serve. So starting tomorrow morning, effectively.
So he just told people how to play them.
So, you know, you can come multiple days and check out all of them.
Of course, there's some games that didn't happen. You remember Final Fantasy game, which is supposed to be this shooting game?
Be showing it to you guys after all this time.
I paused it. I want to talk about this Final Fantasy shooting game. I don't know if any of you remembers. That was showed off a bit later, but I wanted to mention it because yet again, what we end up getting was, of course, this fishing game, what not everyone was that keen of. But this shooting experience looked pretty cool, and that never materialized, which is a shame as well.
We're even more excited to see what you guys come up with, so thank you very much.
Okay, so now they're gonna go to questions, and this is very interesting part. Some questions are just...
a VR-specific operating system that goes along with the headset?
You mean for the PlayStation 4?
Yeah, but something that's like separate from the PlayStation operating system?
What do you
Would
mean
it ever
by...
be standalone, I guess is what I'm asking.
So they're saying is how we're gonna
Would it
operate
ever
it in
be
VR, and as we know now, it's just basic PlayStation 4 interference. I cannot wait to have at least pointers so I don't have to flick my wrist when I'm using move controller. But also new Sense controllers got phone stick, so I'm not that asked about the super fancy menu. I just want to go to the game and play it. And this one does the job, but I definitely don't like flicking my wrist when I'm using move controllers.
I'm just wondering if there's going to be a wire leading from the headset to your PlayStation 4, and if you're hoping to eliminate that before the final model.
Okay, so you can see they looking at each other because of course there is a wire and they know that and they already know that what you are talking about, because the questions press asked then was so far ahead and so easy of course to write down after what PSVR don't support, but it was the achievement at the time.
We're not discussing final specs of this event.
Of course they're not talking about specs and price. The PSVR release for $399 in US, $349 in UK, €399 in Europe.
So that's another final specs question. Highest frame rate we can get and the lowest latency we can get.
Shu approves with this answer. He's like, yeah, my body. You answered it correctly.
And coming out as soon as possible.
Might as well add for as low as possible, too.
Right, for as low as possible as well, yeah.
Are you working with Oculus or other headset makers to
Oculus, of course, back then not owned by Facebook. It was a Kickstarter funded project. People loved it. It wasn't maybe not picking up greatly, and in the early life of Oculus, the HTC Vive seemed to be more beloved headset by the people. Of course, now HTC, I don't know what this company actually does. What's happened to HTC Vive Flow?
Technology, and you're designing it for Sony PlayStation. Is this hardware something that would be applicable to other platforms like PC, for example?
So what another stupid question to ask, can you use PSVR on PC? Because of course the other head-mounted displays had HDMI output. But listen, when you're asking console manufacturer who does, their hardware for their console, if they is gonna go somewhere else, you're asking the wrong questions.
Connected to PC, do you see a future where it could go beyond the console world?
Well, I mean, as a technical person, it's, HDMI, USB, blah, blah, blah. It's compatible, but we're not discussing product decisions today, so.
You had mentioned passing the headset around from person to person at a couch. How many units are you shooting for a single PlayStation 4 using?
So basically they're asking how many PSVRs you can plug into PlayStation.
Do you plan to use eye tracking from inside the device?
I can't believe those questions. So this is 2014. Sony releases headset and they're asking. Nobody was supporting eye tracking in VR back then, by the way. It's just starting to happen now, and Sony gonna be probably first to do so. And that's 2022.
Mobile connectivity on your roadmap?
Sorry, could you repeat that?
Sorry, mobile connectivity for the headsets. You can plug into, let's say, a Sony phone or a Vita.
So yeah, they basically want to use mobiles with PSVR, and yet another, those questions when I'm watching them, it really makes me laugh. The press always shows themselves.
Given the horsepower question, I'm curious what kind of virtual reality experiences, whether the virtual reality experiences rendered by the PlayStation 4 will be graphically less intensive than the games that are rendering it in 2D?
Less
You
intensive,
have
which is
to,
not true,
split
because
the
they
amount of
more
power
intensive.
among the two eyeballs.
Actually, you know, graphically less intensive is not the right word. They'll be very
Exactly.
intensive graphically. You mean maybe less graphically
Yeah,
rich?
I'm curious if there's any kind of reduction in
Oh
overall
my
graphical
God.
quality
So
for
annoying.
to be able to have it in 3 dimensions and have it visually, you know, give you that sense of presence.
3 dimension, he
Whether
meant
that's a
VR.
trade-off or if that's something else.
It's a different thing because the graphics are so rich because you're immersed. It's a different kind of feeling. So you need a different kind of graphics optimization to make the experience good. Tomorrow, you guys can see, I think that some of the graphics look very, very good.
So that's what he's saying. It's so
Yeah.
frustrating. You have to see it
Can't
to,
wait.
you know, appreciate VR, and that was very hard to pass across back in 2014.
Project Morpheus seems to work in conjunction with the PS Move to enhance the user experience and actually have them feel like they're in the virtual world. So do you feel like the next step in the process of actually having like more immersive virtual reality would be to work on like haptic responses?
Finally, a good question,
Haptics
because
is another great sensory input that would further
they
enhance
know it already. They
the
looked at each other, and you can see what's
happened.
happened to haptics this generation. Sony took it to the next
Probably
level,
we're not
and they're gonna do it with
currently working on
VR
any
sense controllers for
specialized
PSVR 2.
VR haptic peripheral or anything like that, but I think we already have some rumble in our products, and down the road, I definitely think haptics will be a big part of the peripherals that we will see for VR.
Very interesting to listen to that, because the haptics are a big part, and they stuck to it.
Thank you.
So talking a little bit again about the challenges of rendering multiple screens, and that there's going to be some adapted view that's available for like the console TV for the people who are sitting in the room. To what degree is there ability to render something different there, both to potentially lie to the player in the experience or outside of it, or to just give an entirely different viewpoint on the same action or whatever? Is essentially a third screen rendering being taken into account for the technology?
Well, we have the capability to render to companion devices using, you know, PlayStation companion apps and stuff like that. So that's actually a really good way for people to interact, not necessarily even using the TV. The current dev kit mirrors what's seen inside there on the TV. But yeah, for other gameplay possibilities, it's an exciting area of research.
Hello. I was wondering, what do you guys see for applications for VR for school systems for like virtualization of like ancient Rome and stuff? I'm working on a virtual museum project with the Oculus Rift right now. I was wondering, where do you see this project being used in school systems at all, and like training simulations at all? Because I know you guys are primarily an entertainment company, but do you think it would go into like simulation market possibly?
So it got a VR museum app released. I wonder if it's actually the developers who's done it. It was interesting, and also it got those experiences, you know, educational experiences on PSVR. But I think that's, you know, even though if Sony wants to do it, it's more for the PC VR and standalone headsets.
VR for you know, post-traumatic stress relief and things like that. So there's already those efforts are undergoing, and we hope that our hardware will be useful for those efforts too.
Yeah, and currently our experience with NASA has been very positive. Yeah. So, you know, working with other schools or, you know, other institutions, I think will be really exciting for us.
All right, thank you.
Congratulations, great, very exciting.
Sure, he's like, I must check my phone.
On the list of content creation and tool partners, there were several companies there that have been associated with 3D, stereo 3D, gaming and content creation, you know, Autodesk and Crytek and DDD. Can you comment on the specific role you see 3D or stereo 3D playing together with your new Morpheus device? Maybe.
So yet another stupid question, asking virtual reality, you know, developers about 3D, especially for VR games when they spend hours explaining it.
Video, yes.
Video, okay.
Yeah.
They're like, oh my God, what do we say to this guy?
I mean, it's different than 3D cinema because, you know, 3D cinema, you take the image with a virtual camera, and then when you present it on the screen, you just kind of shift things to make it look parallaxy. This is fundamentally different because we're actually rendering the correct view for each eye. So there's a lot of learnings from stereo 3D. You know, they do try to.
He's so calm explaining it.
Stuff like that. So, you know, those partners have a lot of expertise in things like optics and all of that. But the experience is different than stereo 3D TV. It's not really the same thing. Yeah, you're rendering two views, but the way you consume that is just completely different.
Yeah,
So,
but some of the tools will overlap. So some of those tools that help you render 3D, especially the authoring tools, will be useful for VR authoring.
Thank you. Hello again. I'm wondering the significance of Project Morpheus as a name and which first-party Sony studios are making games for the headset.
it's a shoe question.
Well, we decided on this name last week, so yeah, this could have been something totally different.
It was chosen because Morpheus is the god of dreams, and so it's sort of supposed to evoke the feeling that it could be a dreamlike experience inside the headset.
So not a Matrix reference then.
Sure.
And which first-party studios are making games for the headset?
Sorry?
Which first-party Sony studios are making games for the HMU?
So Anton showed the screenshot of the Deep. It's done by
London studio, of course,
London
working on the
studio
Deep.
has a lot of
And they
experience
deliver Blood and
working
Truth
on the,
eventually.
augmented reality and 3D input, and so that's one example. And the other studios are kind of experimenting. The number of units, are still limited right now, but we are able to produce more of this unit for all developers. So I'm expecting more studios to work on,
So he not really say which ones apart from London studio. But
If you let your kids try it, or any kids,
can't say too much,
if
I
so,
suppose.
Do they like it? Were they excited? And do you have any recommended age ranges you could release right now?
We don't have a recommended age range yet. That's, again, like more of a product question and the decision.
So age range change, I think
Having
it's
said that,
over
we've
12
had
now.
Young people try it, and they've been very excited about it, obviously. I mean, it's kind of like that's what they expect, right? It's sort of, yeah, it's what you see in the movies.
Hi there.
So I'm being told we're supposed to take one more question. Sorry, that's you.
Me? Okay. All right. I wanted to ask about locomotion. So you can put your hands in the game with the PlayStation Move. Are there any plans to get your feet in there to let you walk around these virtual environments?
Yeah, I mean,
So it's another question they laughed at because, of course, it's silly. But also, this brings me to the Move controllers having lack of thumbstick, something what was pain past last 6 years.
What's your opinion?
It's an active area of research.
It's an active area of research. I mean, I've tried a few different things. Some of them work better than others. It depends on kind of what you're trying to accomplish. If you're trying to accomplish more of a feeling of immersion, I think actually physically locomoting is better than kind of walking in place. That's why we have a quite
Because
wide
you've got
tracking
VR
range.
treadmills and that.
Obviously
I
you
don't
can't
think
walk
that any of
forever,
them is
so,
compatible with
locomoting in
PSVR.
place
That's I think the only way to have locomotion with feet, unless you get like those silly cyber shoes or something like that. But yeah, nothing easy to pull off in the house.
Thank you very much.
Covered the PSVR.
PlayStation.
Okay, so that was 2014 Game Developers Conference and the original PlayStation VR prototype reveal. I found it interesting, a lot of things changed since then. Sony stuck with PSVR past like 6 years and supported it greatly. Let me know what you think and let me know what future holds. That's it from me, big shout out to all the patrons, and that's it, bye.